Hello, everybody. This is Fernando Labastida once again in another episode in the Martechify Expert Interview series. I just want to remind everybody that we're a connected learning community of marketing professionals who share ideas, best practices, and success stories to help other CMOs, marketing directors, practitioners stay current in this fast changing MarTech landscape. Okay, so I'm really happy to be able to introduce to you all my good friend since I would say that we met in 1999. Going on 25 years now almost. And Gerardo, just a little bit about Gerardo. He has 20 years of experience in technology, marketing, and has been the center of the web, mobile, social, and cloud revolutions, right? So he has been a senior marketing and strategy director or different positions at SolarWinds, Microsoft, where he lived in Seattle for a while, Rackspace, DataCore, Bizarre Voice, and Kemper Security. And today he's the CMO of Catchpoint, which is their self-described backbone of the internet. We're going to ask you to elaborate a little more on that. How are you doing today, Gerardo?
Doing great, Fernando. It's good to talk to you. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. So why don't we get right into it? The first question, since it's still 2024, we have a few weeks left till the end of the year. What are your 2025 predictions for MarTech in the coming year?
Well, I have one that is not 100% MarTech, but it's related to traffic, SEO, paid search, which is the new AI overviews that Google's creating is going to create a lot of challenges for people because oftentimes searchers can either go directly to ChatGPT or other AI engines and get the answers they're looking for instead of doing a Google search or Bing or Yahoo. And sometimes when they actually do a Google search, they're going to get these AI overviews that will prevent them from clicking on, normally they would click on some of the links to try to get some information. So I've seen some of the experts estimate the impact to traffic, depending on the keyword, anywhere between 18 to 80%. So I think that's pretty dramatic.
Wow.
And depending on the keyword, the nature of the keyword, not every keyword has those AI overviews. I'm sure Google is looking at this very closely. I know that they also need to do this from a competitive perspective. So that's the first one. My second is that we hear a lot about personalization, AI, Gen AI, and I think every marketer and every marketing department is making big investments into those areas. And my prediction is that in the context of all these shiny objects, the marketers that prioritize investing time in the basics are the marketers are going to win. Because we love shiny objects as marketers, right? But if you look at history, there was big data, Facebook commerce, NFTs, augmented reality, like the list goes on and on and on. I remember, when I was at Bizarre Voice, I was working with one of the social media teams for one of the largest electronic manufacturers. It's like, our goal for this year is to get 1 million followers. And so, and then what? I don't know. I guess we go for 2 million. But what is the value of that? It's like, I don't know. Everybody's doing it. And so the same way with AI, we need to be very careful about our investments. And at the same time, I think there's an opportunity to experiment and learn from the new technologies, but we should not keep an eye out of the foundational of market, like the foundations, which is obviously having a solid MarTech stack, having clear differentiation, having clear ICPs and personas, the right materials for your sellers, etc. A lot of times we enjoy time with the cool stuff and miss on the basics, and that can be catastrophic for marketing team and for the company, right? Because the marketers are, I think that could be my third prediction. Marketers are going to be held increasingly accountable for growth, and that's why you see the number of CMOs that leave companies before even 18 months is increasing. The pressure for CMOs to deliver on the numbers is increasing. So there's going to be a lot more accountability, especially as companies try to become more efficient. So not only CMOs, but every marketer needs to be thinking about the business and hold themselves accountable for high performance. So those will be, I guess, my three predictions for next year.
It's really interesting what you talk about marketers being held more accountable. I've interviewed at least two other marketers on this channel, if not a third, that they're all saying the same thing. The last person I interviewed talked about, the big layoff that we're seeing in the marketing space, and how you got to do more with less, and there's smaller budgets and smaller patience for long rollout times for MarTech, etc. So. Yeah, it's an interesting trend I'm noticing here, Gerardo. So why don't you take us back to the beginning? When I first met you, it was through a little personal ad in Inc. magazine's first website. This is back in 1990. Oh, no. This is not 1999. This was back in 1996. Yeah. And at the time, you actually owned your own computer distribution company in Mexico. But there was a peso crisis, and things were, the economy was going to hell in a handbasket, and you actually made the strategic move to come and move to Austin, and you quickly rose up in the ranks in marketing. But walk us through a little bit about your career trajectory, from how you got from there to where you are today as the CMO of Catchpoint.
Yeah, I guess I think two things that have been very important for me were one is curiosity, right? I think that's a foundational element for anybody to be successful. Somebody who's curious, is always learning. I love to read, and I feel uneasy when I know about a topic that I don't understand completely. So I have this urge to learn, and I think developing that, or finding your passion, or where you're passionate, where you can develop that aspiration for ongoing learning is essential. The second part is that I grew up, as you pointed, as an entrepreneur, right? So I was at the age of creating things and building companies. I had my computer company, but as you probably remember, I had a Greek restaurant, I had a graphic design shop, I had the first real estate magazine in the state, which I did when I was going to college. I had a paint company. We were distributing paint from US, and a couple other businesses. And the reason why that's relevant is not only the concept of being having a bias for action, but also the idea that marketers need to think about the business first. And I think that has helped me tremendously in my career, because I keep thinking like a business person. So I don't think as the job of me as a marketer is not generating leads or having a website or doing a task. It's really helping the business, doing whatever it takes. I take marketing, the practice of marketing more literally. Is like everything that requires an interaction with the market, right? And so having that strategic thought on marketing, I think is very important, very useful for anybody who has career aspirations. Because I think my number one advice for people who want to get promoted is you have to think like your boss, or your boss's boss. Yeah. And so the more you have that perspective, the more useful your insights and your work becomes for the business. So I started with the computer business in the very early days of computers, and with that curiosity, I started learning programming as well, and networking, and all kinds of stuff. And so that means that from the very beginning, I've been very close to the technology itself, and so that's made me one of the most technical marketers that you can find in the B2B space. And so that's made me very comfortable presenting in front of CTOs and having a technical conversation with people. But also that has made me especially useful in B2B, because your goal is really to understand the market and how your customers think, and how they evaluate opportunities, and how they solve challenges. And if you understand the technology at the same level that they understand it, then it's much better, it's much easier as a marketer to be able to make that connection, find the right language, determine the right positioning, identify opportunities in the market, and so on, right? I think there is almost like a gap in most companies where you have a lot of marketers that don't understand the technology, and a lot of technologies that don't understand marketing. So the marketers that can bridge those two gaps, who typically sit in product marketing, have a significant advantage and an opportunity to provide value to the company. So at some point, with in amidst those crises that you mentioned in the country, I've been traveling to the States multiple times a year on business, and I got married, and I told my wife, look, an actor needs to move to Hollywood, a technology marketer needs to move to the Silicon Valley, to the Silicon Alley where you went, or the Silicon Hills, right? So that's how I ended up here. And then, with no career as an employee, I started at the very bottom in the first company, and it's just hard work and luck to an extent.
Yeah, yeah. I actually love that you possess that really deep and solid knowledge and understanding of of technology. So it's not just a question of understanding technology, but also kind of like the mentality behind it. And which brings me to my first question, which is, how did you end up being both a CMO of your current company, Catchpoint, as well as field CTO? And I think the question is probably obvious, your background in technology, but tell me about that a little bit.
Well, so when I joined Catchpoint, the company was falling on the trap that many companies fall into, which is they wanted to be part of a big market, right? So they wanted to be in the observability space. But saying we're an observability player, yeah, and so there's another 20, 30 companies, maybe 100 companies that are in the same space. So it's really hard to differentiate yourself if you're just following the market and you're playing in a market that's very crowded, very hard to stand out. When I was at Rackspace, it was the same thing. We want to be in hybrid cloud, but then again, everybody was in hybrid cloud, right? HP and Oracle, and there's so many companies. You could go to a trade show, and actually I did this exercise. I went to a trade show and I wrote down the headlines for all the companies out there, and about 50% of them were talking about hybrid cloud. I went to the Gartner Symposium, which is probably the biggest IT event in Barcelona, and we also went to the one in Orlando. And so many companies now are saying Gen AI, right? So when I joined Catchpoint, back to that, is I thought, like, we're never going to win in this space unless we find really what makes us unique and what is a key point of differentiation. So I wrote a fairly extensive positioning document defining the space that we need to own, how we're completely different from the competition, what is the value we bring to the market. And then we built a strategy around being very focused on thought leadership and having a different point of view and educating the market, not on here's our product and what we sell and the features, but here's our point of view on how to think about the problem. And so when a customer agrees on this different point of view, they're naturally inclined to buy our products, and especially from the company that taught them about this new point of view. So I ended up doing a lot of customer presentations, being in front of analysts and stuff like that. And then, the truth is that most of IT buyers, they don't want to hear from marketers. And so that's why I kind of adopted the field CTO title as well, to earn a little bit more credibility.
I love it.
In the space. And then of course now you have to deliver, right? That also creates an expectation that you need to be talking like a CTO and having the insights of a CTO. So I need that puts a bar for me when I'm in front of a customer or analyst or doing a webinar, where I need to rise to that level of technical competence as well.
Oh, I love that so much. And kind of going back to what you said earlier about, differentiating yourself through thought leadership and talking about, the different approaches, the unique approach to solving the problems, et cetera. It kind of reminds me of the HubSpot strategy that they took when they started blogging about, and then had the conference about inbound marketing, as opposed to, this is HubSpot, this is HubSpot, this is HubSpot. So they were talking about inbound marketing, and as a result, they spread the word about inbound marketing. Everybody started adopting the moniker, especially if they were a B2B marketing agency. And by the way, you need, HubSpot software to carry out inbound marketing, right? So it sounds very much like what you're talking about. Yeah,
what's funny is that then HubSpot built a big BDR team. They started calling people doing outbound marketing to promote their inbound marketing product. So I'm actually subscribing to a new philosophy that you could actually call inbound 2.0, which is basically taking that position of we want to educate customers first, and then have them come to us asking for products and asking for raising their hand and asking for information, versus we going out to customers, interrupting them and nudging them, interrupting their day to try to get their attention so that we can sell them something. And so I think something that to me is very logical, but is one of the challenges in today's marketing, is the idea that we ungate all of our content, 100% of it. I've done tests at 3 companies. At 2 of them, I took one of those Gartner research papers, which are high value papers, promoted them on social media, right? And then measured the drop-off rate. And the range that I've seen over the last 5 years is actually getting worse. It was 99% drop-off rate. Now it's 99.75% drop-off rate. That means that we spend money creating this asset, and we think this asset is helpful for customers to want to buy our products. And then we put a gate in front of them. That means that 399 out of those 400 people that we attracted are going to say, no, thanks. I don't want to be getting 5 calls from an SDR and a bunch of emails, and you're going to put me on nurture forever. And I don't need that, right? And I don't want to even fill a form. I don't have time for that, because marketers also love to have forms that have zip code and all the information we want selfishly. So in that model, yes, you're producing leads, but A, is very expensive. B, you're only capturing 0.25% of the people that is interested in your content. And C, you're generating a lot of leads. There are people just read a white paper, and that now your SDR teams are wasting their time calling people that have no interest in buying, right? So what we did is said, look, we're going to create high quality content that we want people not only to have access to without any gates, but we want it to be shared. And then that sets the bar on our side, that the content needs to be so good that people want to come back for more, is going to establish ourselves as experts, and is going to, at some point, is going to result in those customers wanting to do business with us. And so when a customer comes back to our website multiple times, and then they ask, I want a demo, or I want pricing, or I have a technical question, that's when we engage. But the customer at that point is 2 or 3 steps ahead in the buying process. And that allows us to have a smaller team of BDRs that is only focusing on what we call high intent marketing qualified leads. And so that becomes very efficient for us. But it requires one to have that important point of view in the market. It requires super high quality content, and it requires a lot of faith in that the whole marketing machine is going to work.
It kind of reminds me of the zero-click marketing concept that Rand Fishkin and Amanda Natividad talk about. They work for SparkToro. And by the way, Rand Fishkin has, as you probably know, has kind of gone 180 degrees different. He's no longer a fan of SEO. He's a fan of this zero-click marketing concept. So I love that. I think that, you told me before the interview that you were going to share some insights that were kind of goes against the grain. It's kind of almost antithetical to what marketers want to do. They always want to build a funnel. They want to build a gate. They want to have a lead magnet that people can download, et cetera, and they want to be able to market them. And so it's like, I think it's what you're saying is a very big breath of fresh air.
Well, it goes back to the idea that sometimes marketers are attracted to fake KPIs, right? Number of downloads for a product or number of leads that you're passing to the BDR team is not a real metric. It can be a leading indicator if you have the right metrics, right? And also, it's based on the belief that our BDR team can guide customers and nudge them to becoming customers, which we on the other side as customers hate that concept, right? You don't want to be nudged and spammed and forced by a BDR. We all hate those calls at 7:00 at night. I get probably 10 calls on my cell phone. I don't pick up the phone anymore unless it's a number I know and I know what they want. But still, we still do that, right? Because we believe that if we can capture their phone number and their email, and we keep doing this with tools that tell you who's visiting your website, so you can spam them and And I don't know, the belief is that it's like, I keep thinking, it's like I'm an American Airlines frequent flyer, and they send me, I think, 2 or 3 mailers, paper mailers every month to get me on the credit card. And it's what I call brute force marketing, right? At one point I started collecting them in a year. I had a stack this big of those. It was exactly the same mailer, right? And they keep sending this month after month after month with some hope that maybe at some point I'll give up and I'll just sign up because I don't want to receive more mail. I don't know what it is, but it's brute force marketing, right? And we know in our heart that that doesn't work, or it's not efficient, it's not ideal, but we still do it because we are in love with the concept of, hey, we can generate 100 leads from this white paper.
Exactly. And what you said is was it a false or a fake metric? No, a false metric, or a metric that'll lull us into to sleep a little bit, but it's not a real metric that predicts any kind of sales results. So that actually leads me. That was a great segue. Your counterintuitive philosophy into your marketing stack. I really would like to know, what's your philosophy behind building your marketing stack? What are you measuring? What are you automating? Are you using AI? And how does that fit into your approach to marketing?
Yeah, so let me ask you the last part. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for AI, and we are experimenting with content creation. So far, I think AI is creating a lot of garbage content because AI is not creative. It doesn't have a point of view, right? So it can be helpful to rewrite or to start writing something or to help create an outline. But I think a lot of marketers are using AI to generate a ton of spammy email content or bad content that's put on the website. So far, we haven't found any tool, and I've looked at, I don't want to badmouth anybody, but I looked at some of the main ones, and we haven't been able to find something that, at least for us, which we're looking for, again, high quality, educational, differentiated content. It hasn't been able to do that even after training. But we keep experimenting with those, right? So we're hopeful. We know that there's going to be some diamond at some point in time in AI and in the MarTech stack. We use a couple of tools for BDRs to have good sequences based on industry when somebody comes in, so that they have an intelligent conversation or a guide. We use HubSpot. We use Demandbase to do ABM as well, right? So identify people who are in market, and then again, we don't try to sell them. We put educational content in front of them with this philosophy that education is the best form of marketing. I think that's, at the end of the day, that's a principle, and people love to learn, especially at least in this market in IT, especially when you have a good point of view. And from that point on, we're trying to keep our MarTech stack as simple as possible, right? Because I think it can get very complicated. You can end up with a big team of MarTech people that are just trying to connect hoses of data and cleaning data and stuff like that. But I guess also the idea of focusing on the high quality, high intent leads makes it easier for us because, another instance of the same philosophy, we go to a trade show, and at previous companies, I remember, I'm sure you've done this before, you were at a trade show and they're trying to scan everybody, right? They have a lead, let's scan 1,000 people. And they're scanning the cleaning crew, and you're scanning the catering crew, and they're not going to buy anything, but they count towards the goal, right? And it's useless. And somebody, hey, can I get some socks? Yeah, sure, let me scan you. And you end up and for some companies that you have a message that you want to have very relevant, you're building a database, it makes sense in some cases to scan all the attendees at least. But in our case, we said, you want some socks? Here are the socks. And customers asked us, you're not going to scan me? It's like, why? You want me to send you 10 emails and call you 5 times and say, no, then I don't want to have my BDRs team wasting that time, right? So just the point is that we go to an event with 5,000 attendees, and our goal is not, let's scan as many people as possible, is there are 25, 50 people in this room that really need our product, that have a problem we can solve, and that are ready to buy relatively soon. So our job is not to scan as many people, but to find those 25, those 50 people. And so we can have a very focused conversation with them. And so when you then change your lead machine, and instead of handling thousands of leads, you have dozens or hundreds of leads. Of course, you can only do this with a high value product. Then it becomes more efficient. It becomes easier to manage. It becomes easier to diagnose problems and spot opportunities, right? Because you eliminate all the noise.
Yeah, that's great. So you work with fewer leads, but these leads are or prospects, and these prospects are a lot higher quality. So much more efficient use of your BDR's team and your marketing team's time.
And all this starts by not having, well, I don't know the bad metrics, maybe vanity metrics, probably a better way to say that, right? Vanity metrics, because they make you feel good, but they don't really help the business. The philosophy is anchored on the foundation that the marketing team has only one goal, which is revenue and growth, right? And we share the same goal with sales. And once we have the same goal and the same goal as our CEO, then things become so much easier from that point on. There's a lot less friction, a lot less discussion about those are good leads or bad leads. We're just all committed to making the company successful, right? Everybody in marketing knows that the only end goal is growth and revenue. Leads or success in a tactic or any of those vanity metrics are useful sometimes as leading indicators, but those are not what we get paid for.
Yeah, exactly. So so you use HubSpot for probably email marketing or for social media and SEO, et cetera, and then you use Demandbase for ABM. Is that? And I know I think Demandbase actually coined the term ABM, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think they were one of the pioneers. I know, golly, about 6 or 7 years ago, I took a ABM certification course from Demandbase for free, and
but you know, the concept existed before that, right? Like the concept that there were concepts like maxi marketing and account centered marketing, and it was the same concept existed before with other names. And in fact, it's not only ABM, but it's really ABX, right? It's account based focus for the company, account based strategy. Like in our case, for example, we have a very well defined ICP, coming back to the basics, and we have a very defined list of 6,000 companies that we believe are the ones that will benefit most from our products. So we know exactly what are those 6,000 companies globally that we want to sell to. And the entire company agrees and knows that list of companies.
So how are you implementing ABX at Catchpoint? Are you doing pre-marketing advertising? Using Demandbase as a tool to to understand who's in market and where what information sources they consume, or are you doing dimensional gifts? I'm trying to understand a little bit about how you practice ABM. Obviously, you're against interruption marketing, right? So you're a fan of inbound 2.0, but how does your ABX strategy manifest itself within your current position?
So the first point is that ABM is not a tool, right? So Demandbase or Sixth Sense or whatever you want to use, that is just a tool set to help you execute an AB and ABX strategy, right? Second point is that in order to have an account-based strategy, you need to have 100% clarity on who's your ideal customer, right? So what is your ICP? What are those segments? What is the ideal customer personas? What is your message to those personas? Messages by segment or by vertical, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't have that clarity, you cannot execute on an ABM strategy. So from that point, we have 4 ICPs in 4 verticals with some minimums of dollars and some other requirements. And so that's our first level, right? So we will market to, let's say, all the top 1,000 retailers in the world, right? So that definition is there. And that means that when we do, I don't know, it could be LinkedIn ads, or we want to work with a online retail publication, et cetera, we make investments and we judge those marketing opportunities to the extent that allows us to reach to those companies in that meet that ICP. So that's kind of the first level, broader. Second level is more specific. Okay, what are the names of those 1,000 companies, right? So we have the list of those 1,000 companies. And third level is, okay, who are the decision-making or the buyer personas in those 1,000 level companies? So now you have the list of maybe 3 contacts per company. I'm going to make it up. You have 1,000 accounts, 3,000 people. And then your marketing, my previous company is now advertising on Formula One, spending millions of dollars. That's as broad marketing as you can imagine. But if you do account-based marketing, you have to do the opposite approach. Instead of fishing with a net, you fish with a spear, right? So where do I find those 1,000 companies? Where do I find those 3,000 individuals? What events are going on, attending, etc. And then we use that as, again, the filter to judge every marketing activity, every campaign we use. How many of those have we achieved? Have we talked to? How many of those 1,000 companies did we engage in the last year, right? So that tells you a little bit of what is your ability to influence that market. And on LinkedIn, you can actually say, okay, well, let's start with the top 100 and have a campaign for the top 100. You spend X amount of dollars, and then you have another tier with the next 1,000, the next 900 companies, and spend a different amount of money. And then when you go to a trade show, then you match the leads you get or the people you talk to against that list of ICPs, right? So again, it's not a demand-based centric strategy. It's a strategy that we're going to focus on the right ideal customer profiles and have a hyper-focused conversation with that segment of the market. Now, on the case of demand-based, we say those customers who meet this criteria or individuals and are looking for this type of solutions, we want to have an engagement with them. So then we spend money to prioritize showing them relevant content that we think is going to be useful in the context of what they're searching, right? And that's a way to kind of engage them with our high quality content and start the buying process.
Great. So that's another great segue into content marketing. I know you've always been a big fan. You told us earlier, but you've always been a big fan of content marketing. I remember seeing you speak at a local event in Austin. I think Elizabeth Quintanilla was one of the organizers, and she invited you to speak about content marketing. I loved that talk. I think that was back in 2013 or 2014 or something. But how do you execute content marketing at Catchpoint? Do you focus more on top of the funnel content, or is it more in buying intent-based content? Help us understand a little bit about how you approach content marketing.
So I'll give you another one that I actually have a blog post that I've been writing for some time. I just haven't found the time to finish it. You know how people say there's some industry experts that have been saying that every marketing team is an editorial team, and they're hiring news editors, and they're basically turning their organizations into content machines. So my blog post that I hope to finish this holiday season is called "Stop the Content Machines," because we believe, or it's based on the belief that content needs to be published like a newspaper, right? You expect your newspaper to arrive in the front door. I mean, I don't think any of us read the physical newspaper, but you know what I mean, right? Like it's supposed to arrive in the front door every morning and have X number of pages, and so you have to figure out what you're going to talk about. And so a consequence of that, when you have a metric that is date-driven or volume-driven, then the consequence is you end up producing a lot of crappy content, and you end up outsourcing your content because your experts cannot produce it, and so you produce volumes of very bad content, and that diminishes your reputation in the market. And with so many people publishing content, when I joined the company, we had a philosophy that we had to publish something on LinkedIn every day in the morning and in the afternoon, and we'll publish every other day something on a blog. And I said, why? If you start publishing that bad content, people are going to learn that the content from your company is bad, and then just going to either tune it out or unsubscribe or ignore it. All three of those outcomes are terrible. So my content philosophy is we'll publish content on our blog posts or our newsletters, etc., as often as we have something valuable, interesting, and educational to say. That is the rule. If we don't have anything to say for a week, 2 weeks, I'd rather have our blog be silent. Like, show me one email from a customer saying, hey, I read your blog post every Tuesday morning. Where is this week's blog post? I've never seen one of those emails or complaints, right? Because customers are not really that hungry for our content. So it's better not to say anything. And that creates the opposite effect. Every time you say something, customers know that it's going to be valuable, educational, and specific, which is kind of the three rules that we have. And so that results in growing your readership. Now, what content to build? There are two formulas. One is what the topic needs to be. We built a matrix that is kind of like our solutions and problems, use cases that we solve, the verticals and the personas, right? So what is useful for those three categories, and there's a lot of intersection between them. And then by stage, right? What's going to engage them to have an initial conversation, etc. What is middle funnel, bottom of the funnel, etc. But the most interesting angle that I think I actually presented at that conference, and I've been using, as I've seen a couple other marketers and even some of the content publishers adopt that, is that I believe in three concentric circles, and the content you need to produce is at the center of those three concentric circles. One is what the market cares about, what your customers care about, right? So if you want to talk about something that your customers don't care about, they're not going to read it, so it's useless. So you make a list of topics that are relevant for your customers, their concerns, the problem they're trying to solve. Second one is, what are the topics that you have a particular knowledge or a point of view or some insights that nobody else has, right? So that's kind of your own knowledge that is unique, that you have something special to offer to the market. And the third one is, what is the content that will be predisposing people to buy from you, right? So if you think about those three circles and how they are vast universes of topics and ideas, the intersection of those three pieces, those three circles, are things that you know a lot about, your customers care about, and your point of view is going to predispose people to buy from you. So that is kind of the sweet spot of content, and that results in content that is useful for the company, but also relevant for the audience.
Mm-hmm. And did you, like in your experience building these, building this intersection between the three concentric circles, but then looking at the intersection of those, if they're interposed on top of each other, did you get it right the first time, or was it a question of experimentation and trying to test what content would have all three of those characteristics and would bring people to buy from you?
I think it requires first a deep knowledge of your audience, which is the first rule for marketing, right? You need to understand your customers and how they think and where they go for information and what kind of keeps them up at night, etc. That requires, so you build the hypothesis on that, and that's the part that I think that requires a little more experimentation. As you know, even the title of a paper can have dramatic changes on its reception, right? So you can create a white paper, come up with 4 different titles, publish it 4 times, and there will be a dramatic difference in adoption and readership for those 4 versions of this exact same paper. The second part is what your company really knows more about that will predispose people to buy. That is something that you cannot experiment with the content. That's something you need to develop as you try to develop your differentiation and your positioning. And you need to understand your talent bench and your expertise bench and who are the thought leaders within your company. So I'll give you an example. There's this concept on the internet called BGP, Border Gateway Protocol. Think about it like the zip code system of the internet, right? And so large companies have this BGP addresses, ASNs that they need to protect. But a lot of people don't even know that this is how the internet works, so they're not paying attention. So 3 years ago, there was a problem with Meta's BGP addresses. And that's, if you remember, there was one day where Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp went down for the entire day.
Yes, I remember. That was a day that would live in infamy for so many people.
They lost hundreds of millions of dollars, and they said, who can help us with this? And they found Catchpoint, and now they're one of our customers, right? But the point is, I learned through that experience, or I heard that story when I joined the company, is like, who else can do BGP and give companies real-time information on what's happening with their BGP routing? And they said, nobody else. And they said, like, well, this is one of those things that is very unique to us. Who do we know in the company? And they named 4 people in the company that are some of the foremost experts on BGP in the world. Like, they give presentations at conferences, and they are talking to people that work with the large internet companies, etc., and their information is sought after. So I asked them to write a paper that explains BGP and what challenges happen and what is a BGP hijack and how does the information propagate across the internet and so on. So they did that, ended up being a 25 paper on our website. and it is called simply the ultimate guide to BGP. And so this guide only mentions Catchpoint in the cover, just to be upfront that it's a paper we created, and the last page. Everything else, if you open the entire paper, it doesn't mention Catchpoint one time. And so it's incredibly useful for anybody like Meta or any other large company that cares about the internet, which is pretty much every large company. It's a lot of extremely valuable content by some of the world's experts on this. And it's not a selling paper. It doesn't talk about features. It's not trying to sell you anything. So we put it out there, and it meets the criteria, right? It's something that big companies care about. It is something that we have unique knowledge. And the more people understand BGP and the risks and what problems they have, they're likely to say, okay, who can help me with this? Obviously, Catchpoint. And obviously, the last page we say, if you want to learn more, here's a white paper on preventing issues. Here's a demo of how our product solves those issues, etc. So the last page includes some links. But the idea is also a great example of why this is ungated. Nobody at a small company will care about it. Nobody who is not a network engineer or an expert in internet technology is not going to care about it. So the document itself is filtering so that only people who are in our market are going to be reading it. So we know already that anybody who reads this paper is likely a potential customer for us, right? Anybody who reads that is going to say, wow, these guys are really smart. They know their stuff, right? So it helps our brand. And three, they're going to say like, wait, they're not selling me anything, which is different, right? And that's the good thing about having a contrarian position, that everybody's trying to sell you something, we don't, so it makes us look good. And so they say like, well, we've heard so many times, we really appreciate you putting out this paper and not being overly salesy or trying to market anything of that sort, right? So it is a wonderful example of our strategy. And through that paper, we attract not a high number, a small number of companies that care about this, and then they learn more about how we help them with this type of problems, and many of them end up being our customers, and they can become very significant revenue growth opportunities for the company.
Okay, so this is fascinating. Did the company already differentiate itself from the very beginning as a BGP provider, or was that something that you all had to discover?
It's something that we did, but we didn't talk about it enough as a differentiator. We didn't believe it. We didn't think about it as a use case or a problem that customers had. Because here's the other problem that in traditional marketing, you go to your SEO dashboard and find the keywords that have the most volume, right? And you prioritize the keywords with most volume. But that means you're just competing with everybody else, right? It's like competing for Gen AI right now. Like every company is talking about Gen AI. So you're going to be company number 1,350,000 trying to make noise on that topic, which means nobody's going to learn about your stuff. So my contrarian approach is no, I prefer the long tail, small keywords that only 1,000 companies on the planet care about. But any of those 1,000 companies, we can do a better job than anybody else at helping them. So like I was saying in the beginning, the company was trying to be part of this observability market. It was a big market and it's confusing. And they were talking about things that every other observability company was talking about, which is noise in the market. When we start talking about BGP, the number of searches and the number of people talking about it is very small. So you stand out very quickly for people who really care about that. Even simpler things, right? So you probably know about CDNs. You have a background in content, right? So we work with all the CDNs in the world. Every large CDN uses Catchpoint to monitor their performance. All of them, Akamai and Google, Azure, Fastly, Edgio, all of them use Catchpoint because we're the best at that. We started creating content for CDN monitoring. Again, a relatively obscure term. Now we're number 1 and number 4 in SERP, right? And so we don't dominate when somebody looks for observability. We don't even care. I cannot tell you what's our position because we don't even measure that. But for the keywords that really matter, like CDN monitoring, those are critical keywords for us because every every media company, every company with a large website, every online retailer cares about their CDN. And when they look for CDN monitoring, they're going to find their stuff.
Well, this is fantastic. We've reached almost the end of the interview. I think I could probably go another 30 minutes or an hour interviewing you because you've got such interesting insights, contrarian insights, which are always the best insights, I think. But before we conclude the interview, I was wondering if you could, if there's anything that you really want to communicate, kind of something that's kind of, a burning issue in your brain right now that you want to evangelize and talk about a little bit. Yeah, or if there's something else that you want to just say that I maybe didn't ask you and I should have asked you.
Well, that's a very broad question. It's hard to come up with something on the fly that we haven't talked about. So, but how's this? I would go back to my first prediction and encourage marketers to go back to the basics. Right? Don't get distracted with shiny objects. Yes, we need to be continuously experimenting, always learning about new technologies, but start with the foundation of your company. Here's the thing. There's an author in Austin, Richard Rivera. I don't know if you know him or know of him. He wrote a book called The Champion. So he's a fantastic sales coach and sales trainer. So if you're planning to do an FKO, he's somebody who you should bring. So we brought him to our FKO, and I didn't know him before. And when I started talking with him, he said, "Hey, can you send me your persona segments and ICPs, etc." So I sent him all that stuff, and he replied. Next time we talked, he said, "You know what? I do this with hundreds of companies. I think this is the first time that I have a company that gives me all these materials in a way that is clear, succinct, and useful." And I didn't take that as a compliment to me. I took that as like, wow, I didn't know that we were failing so bad as marketers, because that to me is the foundation, right? So unless you have that clarity, it's really hard to execute on any ABM or MarTech or any other marketing strategy. So I have a document that I start every year, and right now it's called 2025 Marketing Strategy and Messaging. And it has everything from our ICPs to our messaging, to our boilerplate, to our content strategy, to our personas, to our thought leadership point of views, etc. And we just keep enhancing, fine-tuning that body of content because it's the guiding set of knowledge for everybody in marketing, right? And that brings me to another point, which back to the idea of content production. Content is not about volume. Like if you look, I used to work at a small company. I was a CMO of this company called DataCore. And so when I looked at the content assets that we had thousands, blog posts, white papers, solution guides, etc. And we kept building more and more and more. And we said, like, how do we expect our sellers to even navigate this amount of content, right? And then there's a lot of, tools now to help them navigate based on stage and persona. But even then, the output is still so much and outdated content and all that. And then how do we expect our customers to even understand this amount of content? So what we did is let's focus on quality, not on quantity. So by persona or by stage or by use case, whatever you want to do, I'm actually preferring by persona. What are the top 5 pieces of content that you think if you meet, I don't know, VP of e-commerce or your ideal customer profile on a flight, right? You're sitting next to somebody. What are the top 3 pieces of content, top 6 that you would want that person to read? They read them. They would be amazed at what you do. They understand your value prop and they want to buy from you, right? And then if you found those 6 pieces of content, instead of creating another 100 pieces of content for that persona, imagine if you apply the same amount of effort just to make them better and better and better and better every single month, right? Where will your content be 2 years from now? Would you be better off with 500 pieces of content or with 15 pieces of content that are absolutely phenomenal for your buyers, right? So that's why this is about my blog post I'm working on is Stop the Content Machines. It's really more about polishing gems than a machine that is just cranking out content all the time like a newspaper. It's almost like, you buy a book that is already in its 10th edition, it's really good, right? Because the author has improved it with feedback and getting it better and better. And look, the best business books, I don't know, if you're in technology, Geoffrey's more Crossing the Chasm. If you read, I mean, I started marketing because of positioning, the battle for your mind, right? That's still a classic, and it's been, I don't know, I read it in middle school. It's got to be decades now. Al Rice, by the way, just passed away recently, and I had the opportunity to tell him that I became a marketer because of his book. I'm thankful for having the chance to tell him that. He was very appreciative of it. But those books are the best. So the same apply that to your own content. Find the best piece of content and just make sure you have beautiful diamonds that are extremely valuable. Not a library of 1,000 books that you'll never get to read.
Yeah, I mean, what a unique concept. Think about what you're going to write beforehand and do a little bit of planning instead of just writing content as a knee-jerk reaction to keep up with everybody else. Well, Gerardo, this has been a delightful conversation. Thank you so much for spending part of your afternoon with us over here at Martechify. And I usually ask people this, but I think I could probably tell the people that they can find you as Gerardo A. Dada on LinkedIn, and Catchpoint is at catchpoint.com.
That's right.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much for coming onto the Martechify interview series, and I will see everybody in a next fascinating interview with another MarTech thought leader. See you next time.
Thank you, Fernando. Take care.